I call to order the Monday, May 8th, 2023 Cumberland Town Council meeting. First order of business is our approval of minutes from April 24th, 2023.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Thank you. Next is our manager's report. Mr. Manager.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A lengthy report, and I apologize in advance, but sorry. Our first item of business would be, my first item is to introduce Cemetery Association President Bob Story, who will be talking about a project that Emma Richard and Ella McIntosh will be doing this summer. So, Bob, if you could come up and introduce the young ladies.
Thank you. As Bill said, I'm Robert Story, President of the Cemetery Association. And everybody I meet in town, I've only lived here 76 years, and everybody I meet wants to know, how are you related to Shirley? She's related to me. I was here first.
Exactly.
So anyhow, over the years, a lot of students come forward, Boy Scouts, this type of thing, and like do projects in our cemeteries, which there's been some great projects over the years. The project this year I'm as excited about as I've been about any. A couple months ago, a couple of young ladies from the senior class got a hold of me and wanted to know, they had a little project in mind that they want to do, and I told them they have to come up and introduce themselves and talk about the project. So come on up, girls.
I'm Ella McIntosh.
And pull the microphone down.
There you go.
There you go.
Perfect.
Yeah, I'm Ella McIntosh.
And I'm Emma Richard. And for our senior project, we wanted to clean the gravestones in the Congressional Cemetery. Good. Do we keep going?
They're doing the gravestones of the veterans. There's about 30 veterans in the Congregational Cemetery. Congregational is the cemetery here at the corner of Blanchard Tuttle Main Street, and these girls have a pretty nice resume started already. And Ella's going to college in Rhode Island, I believe you told me.
Yeah, I'm going to Roger Williams University to major in marine biology. Wow. I'm really excited.
Congrats.
Go ahead, Emma.
I will be attending the United States Air Force Academy this fall.
Nice.
And hopefully, well, I'm planning on majoring in pre-med, but I think I might be persuaded to fly. We'll see.
Madam Chair, may I ask a question?
Oh, sure. Go ahead.
Can you guys explain what's involved with cleaning the stones? What's the process that you're going to be using?
Do you want me to explain it, or do you want to?
So we will choose the veterans stones, and then we will apply the D2 solution, and then rinse it off and use scrapers to try to get the moss off.
This D2, it's a biological solution. It's you spray it on. It comes in a bottle, kind of like Windex or anything. You spray it on, let it sit about 15 or 20 minutes. Then you brush the stones with a soft plastic bristle brush. Then you take a wide putty knife, plastic putty knife, and once across will take all the lichen, the dirt, the grime, and everything. Then you let it sit. Then you brush the stone and wait about another 15 minutes, and then start rinsing off, brushing it off. And if you see the operation, you'd be amazed how fast the grime, the years and years of dirt and grime washes off these stones. So it'll be a fun project, and I thought it was kind of a big undertaking when they contacted me, and I wasn't able to discourage them. So
Well, I think it's great, Bob. I can't thank you two enough. And you haven't even started yet, but it's near and dear to probably all our hearts, so thank you.
When will you be doing this?
We will start next week from May 15th until, I think, May 25th.
Can I ask a question, Madam Chair?
probably be in the cemetery, actually, whole week of the partial week of the 15th, and then the week after, you might want to tell them what you're doing the following week.
Oh, so we discovered that it might not take as long to actually clean the stones. So we planned for the second week, we were going to try to research as much as we could about the veterans and try to find as much lost information that the town doesn't currently have on the website. And then we wanted to create a slideshow presentation of each veteran and put pictures of the before and after of the stones, and then also historical information about them and what they did for our country.
Awesome.
And what the girls don't know yet, they'll also be putting the flags on the on the veterans at the veterans.
Do they sleep
stones.
this week at all, Bob? Or
Yeah.
do they sleep at all this week, or no? Okay.
Yeah.
I was going to ask, thank you, Madam Chair. I was going to ask you what motivated you to do this is my first question. And then secondly, I've heard this is the oldest cemetery in town, is that correct?
I think so. This one's the oldest.
The oldest
Yep.
cemetery. Do we know the oldest date? The oldest tombstone goes back to? Just curious.
Very early 1800s. Probably our oldest burial in the town is probably actually in the Foreside, and most of our cemeteries come into being in the first half of the 1800s.
Got it.
So we did stop the burials in Congregational in 1965. It's there's too many unknowns in the cemetery. It would be impossible to go in and safely excavate or anything.
Understood. So what motivated you to take this on as your project?
Well, I come from a very large military family, and I always knew that was something I was very passionate as I am going to the Air Force Academy. Both of my parents are veterans, and when I was thinking of projects that I could do with Ella, my parents suggested the idea that I could help give back to the military and help give back to the veterans. So I know that both of us, like going to school every day, we see the people put flags in the cemetery, and we wanted to do something that revolved around that. And then we came up with the idea that we could clean the gravestones and focus more importantly on the veterans, as that's something we're both very passionate about.
That's great. And thank you.
I too think what you're doing is admirable. I think that cemeteries are probably, they, to my mind's eye, they are a sacred place, and that it's as a community ages, the history grows, and the people that are there, they all have a story. And I hope as part of your cleaning of the stones that you take recognition of the names and maybe do a little bit of side research and find out who some of these people were and their contributions to the community or their country, and maybe come back and see us in the fall.
Yeah, we hope to do that research during our second week of our senior projects and do create that slideshow, hopefully to share with our high school, but also with the town in case anyone else is interested.
That's awesome.
That's great.
Thank you. Oh, go ahead, Dick.
As a teenager, I too spent some time in the cemetery. My mother was very involved in the Historical Society, so as a 14-year-old, nightgown, ringlets, had to pretend that I had died of dysentery and tell my story. I think that what you guys are doing is much more productive, and congratulate your efforts. Really, really awesome. Great to see you guys.
Thank you, ladies. We look forward to seeing the end result of
you.
both weeks. Thank you.
Congratulations on your pending graduation.
Yes.
Okay, that was great, and thank you for your future service as well. So thank you both. I did want to report this Memorial Day. We will be adding 30 more veterans to our monument. Steve Moriarty will be giving the Memorial Day speech for us. That has been typical of every Memorial Day. So we look forward to that, and the Memorial Day parade is a go. We hope it doesn't rain. If it's whatever it is, we're going forward in one way or another. We do have a backup plan in case we have inclement weather as well. So the parade does go either way, rain or shine. The Bulky Waste Week starts next week. Bulky does mean bulky. If it can fit in a trash can, it should go in a trash can and not just sitting on the lawn. The biggest item that we typically have to leave are items that have any type of refrigeration inside of them. We can't take those and dispose of those until that is evacuated, and that's the only place we do it right now is at Riverside. So unfortunately, those are the items that typically get left behind the most. Meet the Candidates Night is this Wednesday night at 6 p.m. here in the council chambers. We have 3 school board candidates running for 2 positions and 3 council candidates running for 2 positions. So that should be interesting. That will be hosted by the town attorney, Alyssa Tibbetts. She's the only one that has the questions. We don't have the questions or the answers yet. So that will be a good evening. It always has been a very positive event. And again, it's not a debate. It's really just so that we can meet the candidates, see what they're about, and everybody gets the same questions and the same amount to answer those, same amount of time to answer those questions.
Sorry, just real quick.
Yep.
Also, it'll be recorded.
It will be on channel. It'll be on channel 2 and 1301. I encourage you, if you haven't been watching channel 2, to tune in. We have a great team led by our own communications director, Whitney Miller, who has been organizing Sarah and Sean and helping bring more broadcasting throughout the day. So our meetings are now being rebroadcast, planning board meetings. If you want to learn about the Missouri Compromise, Steve Moriarty is on there with the Historical Society in a very interesting meeting. Our 200th birthday celebration has been broadcast. They have really pulled all the YouTube videos and are rebroadcasting them throughout the day. So when you're flipping the channels, if you can get to 1301 or to channel 2, they'll be on both those channels, which we're very excited about to get that up and running again. The update on the Tuttle Road Bridge, it still looks like it will be advertised in 2024 for construction in 2025. So those are calendar years, not fiscal years. So we are still a couple years away from seeing construction. The difficulty obviously is when Johnson Road is shut down and Bucknam Road is shut down, the only way to get into Cumberland Forsyth is through Yarmouth. So we are being very cautious of watching what's happening. I have asked for an exemption for our ladder truck because it is overweight. The bridge right now is rated at 25 ton, and our ladder truck with water on it is over 30 tons. So we're asking for an exemption in case we do have a fire so we can get there. Obviously, we have mutual aid from our neighboring communities in Falmouth and Yarmouth, but you know, we are still the fastest way to get there. So we're hopeful that in the near future we will be able to get an exemption to get the ladder truck over, and only for fires, not for just everyday events. So that's I'm hopeful that'll come soon. Update on the affordable housing projects and market study. David Chase's project in West Cumberland, which is a private developer, which we don't have a lot of say over, is basically going to the planning board sometime this summer. He's proposing 60 units in the old Blue Rock pit, I'll call it. He owns it currently. And I believe 36 of those units will be designated as affordable housing. He's also expressed to me that he'd be willing to see if, you know, town employees somehow could get a first refusal to those. And I said, I don't know how that works, but we'll figure out a way. I know we did with some of the senior housing projects. We advertised here locally first, and then a week later, then it was open to the public. So I think that does work for this as well. So it would be very exciting to see if some of our own employees could, you know, get their first homes. The other part of this study is a market study, and that we have hired a firm to basically do an analysis of the affordable housing needs for both family and senior, checking our demographics, matching the census data, and matching the availability of current inventory and current availability of rentals as well as home sales, and matching that to incomes. So we will get that analysis presented probably at your June 5th council meeting, and then that'll give you at least the ability to hear that and decide what your next steps will be related to mostly the Drown Road project right behind us, because that's the one that you have the most control over. At that time, you can decide what to do next, and we can talk further about that on June 5th. A final item I have here is basically the food trucks at Twinbrook. As you know, the council has a council policy. It's not an ordinance, but a council policy that any events at Twinbrooks, the Lions Club would have first refusal on the concessions for pretty much any event there. Over the years, the Lions Club has had fewer volunteers available for these type of events, and concessions can be a bit chaotic sometimes and a bit all over the place. So the Lions Club has typically not hosted many of those events. Then the next group in the hierarchy there would be the Booster Club itself, and that there are no booster clubs that are willing to basically staff the concessions at Twinbrook for this weekend's event. I believe it's a lacrosse event that Pete Bingham, our rec director, will talk about soon. So they basically asked if they could bring in food trucks since they've really had no other way to turn. We agreed that would be an okay solution for this weekend, but thought that it would be good for the rec committee to bring back a revised or recommendation for the council rules, since when we adopted these rules, food trucks weren't a thing. So now they are, and it's time to look old. Thank you, Ron. So I think it's something that's inevitable. I think people's lives are busier. They don't want to spend a Saturday in a concession stand, and I get it, but it was a great way to fundraise for a lot of booster teams, but now it seems like the food trucks are kind of taking over. And I think there'll be 2 or 3 for this week's event, maybe just 1 or 2. I'm not sure. Pete might have a little bit of insight in that. But that really should come back to you as a policy in the future. So be happy to answer any questions, but that's all I have right now.
No, I think it makes sense. I know being sensitive to Food Stop, but it's not open on Sundays, and I know most of these tournaments are to both days, so I think just thinking about options as well, and Dara's not open on Sunday, and so I think there's probably a lot to think about. That a lot has changed, to your point, in addition to just the concessions and staffing, but also the options in town. Okay.
That's all I have.
Questions on anything? Go ahead.
And Bailey could keep me honest here, but I think that there are some food trucks in Cumberland that are owned by Cumberland owners as well. So that's a positive thing for our community, right? So maybe trying to help usher them into it could be a good thing, kind of a win-win for us as well.
The hard thing is a lot of them are scheduled out for months ahead of time, so the weekend tournaments are prime time at most parks and busy areas. You go to the Eastern Prom, and they're lined up the whole length of the Eastern Prom, so it'll be interesting to see who we can get, but with enough advance notice, I think these groups could do okay by it.
Any other questions? Go ahead.
No, I do remember sitting at Little League games when the ice cream truck shows up and with its music and all the kids go running to the truck. I mean, it's a little bit different, but I don't know, I have mixed feelings about it, so I'm glad it's coming to ordinance so we can tease those out.
Any other questions for the manager and his? All right. Next is, thank you. Next is public discussion. Public discussion is for comments on items that are not on the agenda. Comments are limited to 5 minutes per person. Rebuttal comments will be limited to 2 minutes. Public discussion topics may be brought up again under new business for further council discussion. Is there anyone in the audience this evening for public discussion? Go ahead.
My wife and I wear masks because we've got elderly people that we need to take care of. 101 and 95, so we want to be careful with them. So if you're wondering why we wear masks, we wear them everywhere. So a couple of things, quick things.
Just
am I okay?
your name and where you
Say
reside.
it again?
Just your
Oh, yeah,
introduce
that's
yourself.
right, I forgot. Yep, Bruce Sherwin, Blanchard Road. Yep. So, Mr. Shane, is David Chase a for-profit? Okay, he is, isn't he?
He is.
Yeah, and is he operating in a TIF zone on this project?
He is not.
He is not?
No.
Okay. I just wanted, that was not clear, that I didn't know about that. So, I just got a couple things that I wrote down to talk about here. And I'm going to only go on the last stuff. I'm going to end this. I'm going to end because I had a bunch of other things to say, but I'm going to end by stating that I am concerned that no one, not the task force, not the town council, or the planning board, and the planning board has a much bigger role in this than I thought, that I've learned from Mr. Shane. As a matter of fact, I think on this Drown Road project that you voted the TIF change on, is that your last thing that you will do on that project? Does the planning board take over now? I don't know. Again, I'm not knowledgeable about town stuff. Most taxpayers aren't. I think you folks could do a lot better job of schooling us, instructing us on how this stuff works. Because it's frustrating when you have a big project. This project is a big one between the three of them. The town's not investing the money, but it's over the cost of the school coming in at $73 million. If you add up, this is a big project. It's going to affect a lot of things in town. So back to my reading. I am concerned that no one, not the task force, not the town council, or the planning board, has spent any time researching what the projects will do to our town's character, to our town's taxpayers, and to the folks struggling to stay in this town. There will be problems associated with going so fast and so big on affordable housing. It's a big deal. No one has, as far as I can tell, is doing any due diligence on anything but the effects of inviting another 200 to 800 new residents into our town who will not be paying property taxes, but will need town services that only current taxpayers will be footing the bill for. I feel the town council is possibly getting our town on a path for even more growth problems than we have now. Exhibit A is our school department, which is hemorrhaging from growth. Thank you.
Mr. Sherwin, I'd like to address a little bit of your comments there, just briefly. You have sent numerous emails to the town manager, and by default, they all end up in the town council's mail also. And I know that he has asked you and invited you to come down to his office almost every time I see the response. And again, make sure that you come down and have the discussions that you need to have with Mr. Shane so that you are fully educated. There's no lack of knowledge between Mr. Shane and yourself, only in the fact that you haven't reached out to him to gain that knowledge. And if
Taxpayers in general, sir.
Taxpayers in general are not here this evening, you are.
But they pay the bills, sir.
You are here this evening, so I'm urging you to reach out to see Mr. Shane and get your questions answered, and by extension, by having those answered, you'll have the opportunity to talk to your friends and express what you have learned from them. And again, everybody has the right to come down here. Everybody has the ability to send us an email and get the answers they have to the questions that they want to know. So please, see Mr. Shane, get your questions answered.
Bob, he is tomorrow. We made an appointment for tomorrow afternoon. Councilor Eads and Councilor Story King are coming with Mr. Sherwin to kind of review his questions, and hopefully we can get him the answers he's looking for.
Great. Thank you.
There's one thing that he said that I want to correct before it gets out there and blows up in the public, and that it's not true that any development will be excused from paying property taxes. That's just blatantly false. Any new development, whether it's apartments owned by Avesta Housing or whether it's affordable housing for residents who live and work in the town, they are not excused from property taxes. Their property taxes may be collected and spent in the TIF portion of the budget, but they're still paying the same property taxes assessed at the same value that everyone else is. So that, if that information or misinformation got out into the public, we would be in serious trouble.
Yeah, but there's a second half to that. That money is not available to be used in the general fund.
Yeah, we'll talk about that tomorrow, because I think I can help
You can't
explain
keep
that.
leaving that stuff out. That gets left out all the time.
Can I just add one clarifying point? That is correct. Those funds that are generated are not used in the general fund's budget. That said, they are still collected and they are still spent for town purposes, except they're spent out of a TIF fund. So the same dollar is being collected. It's just which account do you send it to, and then which uses can you use those funds for? And so I think that's something that you guys can discuss a little bit more tomorrow as well, which is helpful.
I think the other clarifying point I just wanted to add is that the two private projects, the one on Route 1 that has already gone through the planning board, and then potentially this one that we'll see this summer through the planning board, the research and thoughtfulness and planning was all done as part of the comprehensive plan. It's part of the thoughtfulness on our zoning review that happened with the planning board. So the process that those projects go through are the same kind of processes that any development by a private entity, person, whomever, but it's really about the thoughtfulness and planning that happened actually 14 years ago, and kind of what is the character of the town and where do we want development for housing versus businesses and all of that. And then to the last point of the potential for a project, I'm pointing behind me, kind of in the new, what we voted to move to a new TIF zone, there is no project. So as far as rushing and kind of rushing to anything, there's nothing we're rushing towards. There's no project, there's no plan. It was, again, kind of the first step to allow for possible projects. But I think that's the plan for June 5th, is to see a report on what's the need, and at that point be able to determine if we move forward with an RFP, how you frame the RFP, what the council would like to kind of give as qualifiers for there if we were to move forward. So I just say that out loud as far as kind of the time being taken. I actually personally feel very different about the rush qualifier of this when I think about kind of the planfulness in our zoning and ordinances. That was all done as part of a comprehensive plan project that I think took a couple of years, and then also kind of the
Well, and
third
there are
project.
still steps along the way. For example, with the David Chase development, if he goes forward, he'll need some conditions granted or waivers in order to put the density in, but he will have to prove that he has housing that's affordable, that meets our criteria for us to allow that density to be put in. And we're not even there yet, and I'm not sure in today's economy that's even doable. He has his work cut out ahead of him to prove that to us.
Yep. Right. Anyone else? Oh, please.
Oh, yeah, I'll grab it for you. You can go to the mic. Yes.
Hi, my name's Tony Donovan. I'm from away. Took me 20 minutes to get here. I live in Portland. I represent a coalition of rail advocacy groups from across the state. About 8 of our groups met in the State House a couple weeks ago to talk about rail bills. I think this may be addressed later in your meeting. I just need to clarify a few things if I can at this point. I'd be happy to answer some questions. Last time I was in this room, I spent 9 months here, right, Bill? I'm a member, was a member, still am, of the Rail Use Advisory Council, which is a legislative directed body, we'll call it RUAC, that was looking at the state of Maine-owned railroads. That map you have in front of you, we try to label SMO, means state of Maine-owned. There's 4 green ones on there. The Rail Use Advisory Councils, again, which met here, it's called the Berlin Subdivision RUAC, but it's actually called the St. Lawrence and Atlantic, or SLR. Your town manager was the chair, and a very successful, you all, I don't have to tell you how good a job he did. Bill did a great job chairing the committee. And I just want to, again, share one very important thing that I'm here for you tonight to tell you, that we have a request of you for your town manager. It has nothing to do with voting for whether you support rail, use of the rail corridors, or whether you support the conversion to trail use of the corridor. That's not a vote we're asking anybody to take at this time. We are asking, we have a bill in the legislature, you wanted to look it up, it's LD 406, it's a result, it came out of the RUACs. It has to do with, rather than looking at each individual corridor, we are looking at we're asking the state to do a vision plan for the state of Maine-owned corridors. And again, if you're not familiar with what we own, a lot of that is on that map. So the SLR RUAC here in this room, along with Portland and Auburn, the town of Cumberland joined rail advocates, and there was 2 groups of rail, 3 maybe, on the committee to vote rail and trail, as opposed to the removal of rails for trails. And I really want that to be stressed, that right now, people are considering removing the state's railroad infrastructure for trail, recreational trails, and bikeways. We're opposed to that, by the way. 2 towns abstained from voting, Pownell and New Gloucester, and then a minority voted to go rip up the trails. And we're saying, wait a minute. Nobody really knew what came out of that. We can talk about the lack of good information that came into it, but we're looking for an opportunity to take it to the next step that gives everyone a really good, fair, and balanced overview of what these railroads are, what they could be, what they should be, and it's in the bill LD 406. The Commissioner of the Department of Transportation, by the way, they oppose any bill that has the word rail in it, just to let you know. I've been doing this for about 20 years. But they oppose this bill. And we've asked, through the sponsor, Senator Ben Shipman from Portland, for a meeting with the DOT. We believe it'll be with the Commissioner, and we've invited some members of the RUAC. Bill Shane from Cumberland, Jonathan Labonte, who's the Transportation Director for Auburn, and Jeremiah Bartlett, who's the Transportation Director for Portland, to meet with the Commissioner, DOT, to discuss what it might be the problem and would they support this bill, which we honestly believe that this is a very, very good bill that will provide information, if done correctly, for all of you and all the towns on the corridor to be able to make very informed decisions about what could be a very important state asset and an asset to your community. So I'll leave it at that. Again, I just want to clarify, we're not here to vote yes or no. We're here to say, let's do it right now. A vision plan for the state of Maine-owned railroads. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
So I just have one question. Thank you, Madam Chair. So Tony, the question I had was, I haven't read the language of the bill yet, but is this basically creating a additional output of information to communities? What's the bill requiring? Is it requiring a meeting for further analysis, or is it requiring the DOT to pump out information to towns so that when they actually vote on a particular project, if that came forward, they have, I guess, more balanced information?
More balanced information. This could be debated, so I'm just going to give my opinion. My opinion is that RUAC processes, there's 3 of them, were heavily, heavily weighted in favor of trails. The information coming out of the consultant was all about trails, and rails make no money, trails make more. I'm just like, what the heck's going on here? And it did confuse a lot of people. What it absolutely did not include, though, when it evaluated rails, was what towns will these trains, if potential trains run, what towns will they stop in? And if they do stop in your town, and by the way, I'm not sure where in Cumberland, but I could tell you all the other towns on that corridor. If they do stop in your town, now you're going to come to the table and talk about it. That last report was way too general. It didn't give term I like is robust public participation. You didn't get it last time. You may hear you did, but you didn't. And that's what this bill seeks to do.
You said your opinion, I'll offer mine. I'm looking at your map here, and you show the line up to Montreal, but you don't show the line to Jay, Farmington, Livermore, that direction either. My opinion, there's a lack of a comprehensive transportation policy in this state. And trail and rail, to me, they're not synonymous. If I look at economic development, rail is a great incentive to bring people whose paper mill just closed down to Lewiston, Auburn, down to Poland, provide jobs. We have help wanted signs everywhere. If the people that need the jobs had a way to get here, rail is a tremendous economic builder for the community, for the state of Maine, and frankly is a long-range vision, provides far more than another car on the road.
Leeds Junction up your way. By the way, I've been to every one of these sites. That's another bill, 860. On this, if you want to look, it says Rockland Branch, Augusta Branch. Down here it says SMO, which is the SLR. And then over here it says the Mountain Division. Those 4 rail corridors, we were asking the state to evaluate all of them in a systematic way to develop a vision plan for the use of them for rail, trains, which was left out of the last one, and where does a trail fit, how it fits. And talk about it, there is a fit. It's just not the whole fit. Thank you for your comment, though. You're right on. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony.
Any other public comment?
Be afraid to kick me in the shins and say, shut up.
All right. Moving to legislation and policy, 23-042, to approve a planting plan from the Lands and Conservation Commission for the area around the compost pad as recommended by the LCC and the Assistant Town Manager. Mr. Schwint, you want to come on up?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Mike Schwint, Chair of your Lands and Conservation Commission. We have the unique opportunity to take a big step forward in food independence in our town tonight. We're asking to use some of the town's land, long-term, to plant a community orchard that'll bear fruit well into the future. It will also give us an opportunity to move a bit back to our roots, where most people grew and preserved their own food. We think the education component is an important part of the whole process. Things like food preservation, orchard maintenance, grafting, pest control, soils, the right plants for the right soils, and the taste of fresh fruit right off the tree. The town has the land, we have the talent and the will to develop a successful program. Jesse has done the bulk of the heavy lifting so far. There's a lot of interest on the part of the commission to get this project underway, and we ask your support in bringing this project to fruition by authorizing a long-term use of this land. What you see on the screen is you can see where the salt shed is. You know where the salt shed is, obviously. It's big enough, nobody's going to miss that. Over here, the top part is where the butterfly garden and the peony gardens are right now. There's a red trail, it's part of the town's trail system, that goes all the way around this whole area. The compost piles are right in here. There's about 5 acres of land that we feel we can do some work on to get the orchard going. Some of it's wetland, you can't do much with it, but we can use that as a point of education. There's other land that's good for planting trees. We did soil testing on it last fall. I think we're in a good stead on that. We have the resources to start buying the trees, part of the grant we had earlier, part of the budget you gave us last year. And we got everything, I think, set to go. If you approve this, we're gonna spend this year laying out where the trees are, where they can be, where stuff can go, how it can fit in there, and then next year we'll do a lot of planting. So far, we have 6 filberts over there and a few grape plants. We got a grape crop last year, 1 Concord grape. I ate it. It was good. So, anyway, Madam Chairman, members of the Town Council, we would appreciate your approval of the resolution to give us long-term use of this land for this purpose. Thank you.
Go ahead, Mike.
Mike, where are the ball fields gonna go?
If there are going to be ball fields over here, that'll be above this ravine right here. The ball field will be in this area up here, as I understand it.
Above the map, Mike.
Okay.
Not part of this map yet. That's between this layout here and Tuttle Road.
Mike, I think this is an admirable proposal, but I guess here's where, what I was on the council when we bought this land.
Yep.
We made it abundantly clear to everybody that we were going to use this for current and future town projects, buildings. You remember the horror show we went through trying to find a place to put the salt shed.
Yep, and I remember the result, which has the salt shed right here. So, yeah.
Right, but you remember what we went through.
Oh, yes.
And we looked at project, I don't want to, I'm not going to vote in favor of this tonight, Mike, only because I don't want to tie the hands of future councils. We bought this land to use for future town projects, not for something like this. I think this is a great project. If you wanted to go over to Twin Brooks, and you've got, as you enter Twin Brooks from Greeley Road, all that land over there, this would be a great place for that. But I think this is the wrong place, and it is really gonna tie the hands of future councils for years and years to come. So, that's me.
Understand.
Thank you, Mike.
Madam Chair,
Oh, go ahead.
I hope I can change your mind, Mike, for 1 second. Every single piece of developable land that you see on that drawing right there that has been developed is upland. Everything that hasn't been developed is wetland almost, with maybe little fingers in between. So we pushed as hard as we could to get as big of a compost pad when we had to permit this. Remember, the DEP put us through that common scheme development with all the way up to the existing garage. We had to basically measure every piece of wetland. So this plan that is before you, none of the plants are in areas that we could expand the compost or the use by the town without some very, very expensive permits. I'm talking tens of thousands of dollars in remediation funds for future wetland impacts. And that would not be the place to use it.
And I don't doubt, Bill, it'd be very expensive, but we don't know what the town needs are going to be 50 years from now. But I do know that if we vote in support of this tonight, we're not going to have that option. And you and I and the people that were here on the council, when we dealt with this whole trying to move the salt shed and Public Works and the whole bit, you know what we went through, trying to find a piece of property that we could do a project on. And I have no doubt, Bill, that you were spot on when it comes to costs, what it would take.
But Mike, the development of this land would be almost impossible.
Right now.
That's true. I don't have a vision to what's going to change in laws, but right now, those are primarily wetlands. We have talked on-site, Chris Moldick, the assistant town manager who oversees all of the public works operation. Basically, we ran a line of stakes all the way up through that's 20 or 30 yards off that pad. That's kind of the no-fly zone, so that couldn't be touched because we didn't want to damage any plants or waste time for the committee to do this as well. So Chris was in support of the plan as well. So for us, I think we have a salt shed and an operation there that honestly, we could build twice that compost pad. We would, but that's as big as we're going to get it for now. And Mike and his team have been very cooperative in looking at areas that they don't get too close to our operation or interfere with it. So I'm sorry you feel that way. I get what you're thinking about for the future, but we still have that other 12 acres on the other side there that could be developed into many things.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Go ahead, Shirley.
How much of this land is cut for hay at this time?
Right now, all of it.
All of
it
it's
that you
cut for
see.
hay, so you don't-
Everything around the pad, yeah. So the 5 or 6 acres that Mike's is talking about would be unavailable in the future. We're going to start pretty much at the top of the screen and work our way back. So over time, this would be the fully developed plan, and that over time could be 3 to 5 years.
Well, see, my point is that it's already being used for agriculture. I share the same concerns, the in perpetuity concerns that Mike has. I think this is a great idea. I love the idea of education. I love the idea of projects. I know orchards need a lot of work to keep the trees sustaining fruit. They have a life expectancy too, and without an arborist, are we going to be hiring an arborist or an orchardist to maintain these down? I'm worried about future costs for the town if we go this route. And then finally, I'll just ask us to remember, well, some of us will remember, some of us don't even know that the land where the middle school and track are was an orchard, was an apple orchard. And part of the reason you see some of the mounds of land around the campus is because that land is polluted from apple tree fertilizer. What is it, arsenic. So, and that had to be buried deep. So that's why some of those mounds are there. They're bearing arsenic from the old apple orchards. But that was all apple orchard too. And then the school needed space and they cut the trees down. Some of the trees were just newly planted because we had a science teacher that I taught with, 7th grade. His name was Tom Hirth, and he is actually the arborist for the city of Bath. And he was teaching science at Greeley Middle School with me on my team, and we planted some more trees, but they never made it to. He taught kids how to graft, and he taught all of those things, which are great things to learn, but then the trees disappeared. Things change, and I'm worried about, I don't want to hamstring future council, so I'm in the same boat as Mike.
Can I ask you, Mike, kind of your plan, your thoughts to Shirley's question about kind of the ongoing costs associated with an operation like this?
Madam Chair, we're starting out with people knowledgeable about what we're doing into the future. I can't predict that, but right now we're not looking at hiring arborists or anything like that.
Go ahead, sorry. Sorry, do you have a question or were you responding to that? Just Bob, Bob had a question. Go ahead, Bob. Okay.
Your turn, Bob.
Okay. Those of us who have short memories, or either way, recall we were sitting up here with a piece of plexiglass separating each one of us. It seems like a long time ago. 2 years ago, or some time ago, I said to Bill Shane, I said, I'd like to identify aggregable lands in the community. What if we had to feed this community? What could we do to help feed our community? So Lands and Conservation developed a plan, came up with a number of acreage. This is a great plan. This is a great idea, and we should stand shoulder to shoulder in support of this. You want to use that land for something else tomorrow, that's what they make chainsaws for. That's what they make bulldozers for. You know, things change, and that's the reality. How many people have we seen buy a piece of land down on the Foreside and tear it down and build something else? That's what happens. You can look up at North Yarmouth there on the corner of Parsons Road and 115, Route 9, and they just tore an old colonial down so they can put housing in there, multiplex housing. So to suggest that we're tying this land up, I don't think that's a valid argument. I think we got to look at the face of what the value of this right now to the community, what this opportunity is for this, This is a great use for this piece of land. I walk this piece of land every Sunday with my dogs, and it's wet. We're not going to build anything on it unless we pull it on piers or something like that. But
Bob,
this is a capstone of thinking and advancing what this community is going to look like. And I think to deny this project to move forward, it sends a bad message. I think we need to stand behind this. I can't think of a single reason why we won't support this.
I just wanted to mention that my first point was there's probably close to 1,000 bales of hay coming off from that land now. That's not.
Not that piece of land, sure.
I just asked the manager.
It's the piece of land above that that's not on the map.
I asked the manager how much of this is being hayed, and he said all of it.
It's all being hayed, but the piece of land that you're looking at, we should take a site walk out there and see that. The majority of the land that produces the hay is not on that map.
My point was, though, we're already using it for food. If you've got even if you only had 500 bales of hay coming off there, that's feeding, I don't know, 500 cows or 200 cows and 100 sheep and goats. And
I think you need to take a look at it.
okay,
I think
well, that's why I asked the question.
Yeah,
and
I think
my answer was all of it. So
yeah, I think you need to take a look at it.
I wanted to take a step back and just really congratulate Jesse and Mike on their efforts and the level of research that has gone into this initiative. We've been talking about this in the Lands and Conservation Commission meetings, and the ideas around how to fund this with grants, looking at what the soil is like, how are we going to teach the community about grafting, and the talent is really there. I think if anyone spent about 5 minutes chit-chatting with Jesse and the research that went into this, I think Jesse was at the Mount Joy Orchard in Munjoy Hill. Is that kind of the that's Portland, a little bit different, right? But kind of similar vision. And so I think that if there is a team in the community that can do this and do this really well, this is the team. They're incredibly smart, incredibly thoughtful, have done the research, and have also gotten really creative about how we can fund this in a way. And so I just wanted to make sure that that was kind of known as well.
I feel like I need more information. I think it might be great to get grants, but grants run out. And I want to support this commission. They are robust and they do great work. And there are cities around our country that mandate that if you're planting trees on the side of the road, you plant fruit trees or nut trees or whatever to help their communities become more sustainable. I support that ideologically, but I can't support it not knowing what future costs might be, what the impact is on I do want to know exactly how many bales of hay are we losing from that piece of property, and how many animals does that feed? Because right now that's immediate. That's immediate resources for the town. And I haven't even talked to anybody that hays it about this. That's just where my mind went when I saw the acreage. So I'm not going to vote for it, and I'm not going to vote against it. I'm going to abstain on this one because I want more information, and I want to be on the record as needing more information.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. So I understand, and I can appreciate the concerns up here that no one wants to earmark or utilize a piece of town-owned land for something and then several years later run into this issue of saying, well, I wish we had that for X or Y, fill in the blank, whatever it is. I personally am a huge proponent of this. I think it's a great and beautiful upgrade to that area. I can't also help think about if there are baseball fields in walking vicinity right there of my 8-year-old playing and my 6-year-old walking through the orchard and learning about how pears are grown or whatever apples are being grown in that area. I've been through quite a few Lands and Conservation Commission meetings and heard Jesse's presentation on this and was very impressed by it as well. I would also say that, Bob's chainsaw comment, I don't want to think in that direction, but we're not talking about putting some, we say this should be preserved for a town project, a future town project. I think it's important to consider this, in my view, a town project, right? This is coming from the Lands and Conservation Commission that is bubbling up to the council now for all of us in the town to enjoy. And so I view it as a town project. Is it a brick and mortar building? No. But in my mind, that if, God forbid, something happens 5, 10, 15 years from now, we need that land again for something, then we'll make that difficult decision then. But I think it's a great, great project, and I'd be happy to support it tonight.
Do we have, you referenced kind of Jesse, I don't know if you can come up and talk to, or if there's more you can add or respond to some of the questions on kind of the long-term planning and the sequencing and costs associated and.
Yeah, so I hear the concern about ongoing costs, and yes, there's
Would you mind introducing, I know we're referring to you as
Jesse Lamar Vincent, Range Road. So I'm on the Sustainability Committee, was on the Climate Action Committee, so I'm under the Lands and Conservation Commission. So part of this was my idea, and we got a grant from the state, what is it, Community Resilience blah, blah, blah grant. And so $15,000 of that was for sustainable and resilient landscaping education. And so we've done the Lawns Gone Wild series this year to educate folks. And so as part of the vision for this 2-year grant money, we thought it would be nice to find a way to have a community-owned space where people could come and learn about how to garden and grow their own food, have a public space where people would be walking anyways because the Red Trail is there, find a way to bring people together, so not hiring people. This isn't going to be a commercial orchard. There will be no pesticides sprayed. There will be no noxious chemicals. The fruit might look a little more blemished than normal fruit, but it'll be, we've got compost and wood chips right there that we can use. And so Mountjoy Orchard in Portland is an entirely volunteer-run organization that has planted an orchard on Munjoy Hill. You can check it out. It's free to pick. They have work party days, and so, I spend all of my free time planting on my own land, which is about 5 acres. You're welcome to come by. I'd love to show you around. It looks a lot like this and is 5 years in. I've got 300 or 400 trees already, and elderberries and blackberries and raspberries and all these things, and I'm one person, and I can take care of that. And so if I can find 2, 3, 10 other people to help, we should be able to take care of this pretty easily with, 1 weekend a month. And again, it's not a commercial orchard, so you're not attempting to get maximum production. If you were, it would be a lot more effort. But if you're just growing the trees to look nice and have pears and apples and nuts into the future for my kids and grandkids, these trees can grow. A standard size apple tree can grow for 100, 200, 300 years, and full size nut trees can grow for 300, 400, 500 years. And so, to the point about being able to feed people into the future, I think having a community resource where people can learn about bees and soil and all of these things, that's important to be able to grow our own food, to be able to have a place where community can gather and learn about, how to grow things and, how to raise bees, whatever. Like, it's nice to have the Lawns Gone Wild series at the library. It's way nicer to work in the dirt with your hands. And, I do that with my son all the time. He's 3. He loves to pick worms out while I'm digging holes. And, I want that for our community and not just for myself. So if you want to shoot it down, that's totally fine. I'm sure we could find another piece of land. I can invite people to come to my house, but I've only got parking for 4 cars. So, yeah, and in the future, if you want to do something else, it's easy to cut the trees down and bulldoze them. You could do it in an afternoon, but I don't think you would, because I think once you see how happy it makes people to be in nature and to be eating fresh fruit and to see things grow and to see flowers blooming and to see, peach and pear trees looking gorgeous while you're on your walk with your dog, there's no way you're ever going to tear this thing down. Yeah, and I think, again, after COVID and we're all by ourselves, I think finding a way to bring people together in a beautiful community space and have a reason to be outdoors together is pretty important for a community, instead of hiding in our houses with our guns, like shooting 6-year-olds who are knocking on our doors. I think being outdoors, you know, in a positive way is something our town needs. So I hear all your concerns. I don't think any of them are valid. Bulldoze it if you got to do something else with it. There's going to be no cost. We raised the grant money for it. I'll be over there every weekend taking care of it until I move or I'm dead. And at that point, you can bulldoze it if it's too much work. So, and, you know, I have a 40-page plan. I don't know. I could talk to you for like months about this. So I would love for you to come over, see my property, and I'll answer every question.
I'd like to interrupt you because you're assuming that I know nothing about this, and that's absolutely not true. I grow my own food, and we have our own orchard. My parents have apple trees and pear trees. I have raspberries, blueberries, year-round raspberries.
You'll be volunteering
You
here
know,
then.
I know what I'm talking about when it comes to farming.
That's what I'm
So
talking
you can't assume that I know nothing.
I'm
I
not
have
I'm not assuming you don't.
indigenous apple trees, which we know don't exist because there's no such thing, but they are wild apple trees, and the fruit, if we let these trees become 150 years old, the fruit will be this big around. You know, I know these things. So I agree, and I don't want to get into a back and forth about this. I just want you to know I'm not ignorant, and I need more to protect the town and its future and its decision. I'd say go ahead and plant it, but know that someday it might be cut down.
Yeah, let's do it.
But I don't want to be in a place where in 10 years or 15 years or something happens to you and you move to another community, we're left having to hire an arborist. You know, and that's the transient nature of our community right now. When we lose I am all for rural Cumberland. There's not anyone on here more for rural Cumberland than I am, but I am also aware of the transient nature of our community at this moment. And we tend to just approve things with a short sight and not have that long-term rural connectedness.
Can I just add one other comment? So I'm not sure about the transient side of things, but in terms of the risk to the town, it's zero. These funds have been granted as part of a grant, and we've already allocated, or potentially, depending on tonight how this goes, allocated money for the Lands and Conservation Commission as part of their normal budget. If we get to a point where it is exorbitantly expensive to run an orchard, we run the analysis and say, is it in the public interest to continue doing this? If not, you end the program. And so to me, I don't view a lot of risk with this proposal. I think it's a beautiful upgrade. I really do.
Just to kind of put my thoughts out there. So I know I was talking to the town manager about some other ideas that have come up, and they seem very targeted in nature demographically, either to young families or it's just to seniors. And I kind of echo you, Jesse, and kind of how do we have a space that brings folks together? And I believe this type of kind of step and plan is actually a great multi-generational project, in that you can have folks of all demographics, ages, knowledge of what you're teaching and at different levels, and that everyone's able to be there together. I know there have been kind of feedback to say that's what we loved about the bicentennial, that it was everyone from the community being in a common space with kind of a common goal, no matter where they were coming from a perspective. If they've lived here for 76 years or if they've lived here for 5. And so I like this plan as a opportunity to have a multi-generational kind of wide demographic investment in the town. To your point, actually minimal investment by the town considering the grants that have been earned so far. So as I look at kind of the vision and the long-term plan that we as a council approved a couple years ago, this fits within that, and kind of understanding the opportunity for development in this area and kind of as it coalesces with other potentials that we have on the radar. This doesn't appear to infringe upon it and or cause a lot of exorbitant costs to still be able to do potentially other things. I would support kind of moving forward with the plan as presented, knowing that it will be long-term to get to the place we're looking at right now in this picture, that it would be a phased approach as well, and would come up for vote every year as part of the budget as well. Mr. Vail?
One last thought. When's the best time to plant a tree? 100 years ago. 20 years ago. When's the second best time to plant a tree? Today.
This is an item for public comment, so I will open it up for any public comment.
Hi, my name is Andrew Pettengill. I'm a resident of Cumberland, Lower Methodist Road. I just wanted to stand in support of this. I am also a farmer. I believe that access to food is very important. I think it's a great plan. I don't know the land that well, but I just wanted to say, as a Cumberland resident, I think it's a great idea.
Thank you. Any other comments from the council? Questions? I will entertain a motion. If I have one.
I would make a motion. Before I make the motion, I respect your concerns.
Thank you.
I don't feel as we should delay this. I personally walk this piece of land every Sunday. I'm confident that I can tell you that the amount of bales, and I have not seen any bales on that piece of land. On the piece of property above that, I see the bales every year. So I don't think that it's being hayed for commercial or residential use. But anyways, I feel strongly that this is just a great idea. I stand fully in support of it. It's to me, it's part of that piece of acknowledging that we don't live in a global world without local results, local limitations. I'm losing the word that I want to think of.
Responsibilities.
Constraints, and this is one piece that allows us to show that we're determined to move forward with sustainability, with our energy use. Any different way that we can make a step forward is a step that we can stand proud of. So. I move to approve the planning plan from the Lands and Conservation Commission for the area around the compost pad as recommended by the Lands and Conservation Commission and the Assistant Town Manager.
Second. A motion and a second. Any other questions or comments from the council? All those in favor? All those opposed? Abstention? The motion carries. Thank you. Thank you. Item 23-043, to hear a report from the Recreation Director regarding mass gatherings and to hold a public hearing to consider and act on mass gatherings approvals for fiscal year 2024.
Madam Chair, Pete Bingham is here.
No. 23-043.
23043.
Yeah. Come on up, Pete.
Yep.
Oh. Maybe I missed it.
This has been basically a report that is supported by the Rec Committee and our Recreation Director, and a lot of these don't meet the threshold of a mass gathering, but I think it's a good list of items so that people can understand the type of events that happen, and Pete's going to share those with you tonight. So, Pete?
Thank you, Pete.
Thanks again, Pete Bingham, Recreation Director. Just before I start on the events for the upcoming fiscal year, just to touch upon what Bill was discussing in the manager's report regarding food trucks. The Cumberland Lacrosse Club had approached us, like many of the other volunteer-based groups in town that use an event at Twin Brook as a fundraiser, they're really struggling on the side of volunteers to staff the snack shack for 12 hours, in some cases with the Labor Day tournament, 24 hours. So more and more groups in Greater Portland are going to this operation of cutting a deal with a local food truck, and they get a percentage of the proceeds. We had a great dry run at the bicentennial event of having food trucks. We have a location in mind on the gravel access road near where the food trucks were set up for the bicentennial 2 years ago. We have power there now due to this, so we're going to give it it's going to be a dry run this upcoming weekend to see how it goes. With that in mind, I will be working with the Recreation Advisory Board in developing a policy exclusive to Twin Brook and the bylaws there. There's nothing in the bylaws about food trucks. I was even looking to see if I could find something about ice cream trucks, because that would have been a thing, but no dice. So we'll be coming up with something just as an amendment to those bylaws, and hopefully have it to you in the next 6 months. Cumberland Soccer Club has also reached out about having food trucks at their 2-day event over Labor Day weekend. That will be included in their mass gathering application, so it's a little different than this. The memo that was included in your packet is a list to date that we know of events that are taking place at Twin Brook. The only 2 that will come to you as a mass gathering application are the Cumberland Soccer Club Labor Day Tournament and the Maine Principals Association Regional Cross Country Championships in late October. Those are actually,
So the green ones say that they're mass gathering, but no police or EMT required.
So the green ones are town-sponsored events. They're approved at the staff level.
Okay.
So yes, there are color-coded ones just to try and break down and delineate what is what. Like the running club is Cumberland Rec-sponsored event, and there's a couple others that fall under that criteria that is a staff level. We recently, at the advisory board meeting, the advisory board approved all of these events for the upcoming year. In addition, granted a waiver for the boys lacrosse jamboree to run all day on Sunday as well. In a way, this actually works in everybody's favor, because the tournament's a little longer, but it doesn't trigger a mass gathering that requires additional town services, and with EMT, police, and even park staff occasionally not available. This just helps everybody in terms of functioning on the event for those 2 days. So everything else on this list is existing. The only new one is a small trail run that's going to take place in July. That's a max of 75 participants. You wouldn't even know that it's going on. Very similar to, we used to have a Katie Craig 5K memorial race over Columbus weekend. We had soccer going on out there. You didn't even know the race was taking place. And on a July weekend is about the least busy the park is during the 8 months that it's open for non-skiing recreational activities. So does anybody have any questions about any of these events, activities, or programs?
So we'll actually get paperwork for the mass gatherings to go through, because on more than one occasion we've missed something, like in the application. So those will actually come to us in addition to this list.
Yes, absolutely. We're not deviating from the process at all in terms of the things that at the staff level meet the mass gathering. So you'll be getting the Labor Day tournament application probably on the agenda in early July. Really, the only reason we've started that process earlier, there's been a transition in leadership at the Cumberland Soccer Club, and also they were the first ones to reach out about food trucks. So I was adamant that we had a food truck plan. The last thing I want, in fact, where they wanted the food trucks was just not going to work. It's a pedestrian area, so I want to make sure if the food truck runs out of burgers at 3 p.m., they just don't go tearing out of there while we've got 3,000 kids playing soccer. So we're working through that process, but that'll be included in your packet for the mass gathering for that event. And for the regional cross country, the boosters will most likely provide traditional concessions for that event.
Well, Pete's at the dais. I wanted to thank him for bringing up some pretty tough topics at our last advisory board meeting. We talked about how do you manage or how do you respond to parents who aren't actually being positive towards the referees or the coaches or even the other kids on the team. And someone mentioned in another community that they assigned those people to referee. And then I saw it on the Yarmouth Facebook page that was their idea. But I have another idea now. Maybe we could assign them to work the snack shack.
That might be the ultimate penance if you do something like that.
I digress. I'm sorry,
that's
but
good.
it was just a thought I had. You know, I want people to understand how much work goes into these events. It's a lot of work.
And I see it at the 14 years of being on hand for these things. Sometimes the most stressful aspect of it is the concession part. It's weather dependent. If it's cold, you are left with millions of cases of water. If it's hot, then you get cleaned out before lunch. I mean, there's just a lot that goes into it. And if you don't have the expertise or whatnot, you can lose money on your concessions. Especially with the perishable items. I've seen a dumpster full of hot dog buns there before because the weather did not go so well. So it's definitely there's an art to it, and Bob, you can certainly speak volunteering with the Lions Club for years and years. The concessions at both the fair and at Twin Brook were kind of the organization's bread and butter, and you had some pretty knowledgeable folks that knew how to make that hum. And there's definitely a skill and knowledge to it. So the food truck's not bad. I'm on board with it. I just want to make sure public safety wise that we've got all our ducks in a row.
Can I just one question. I just want to be clear on kind of to Shirley's question and maybe just to say officially too, what we're approving tonight is kind of the mass gathering plan for Twin Brooks, but each respective event that requires and hits the mass gathering threshold would still come to us for their individual mass gathering.
Yeah, I was looking at the motion as well, and if you just had the materials, it would be a little confusing. I think the exceptions are going to be the Labor Day tournament and the cross-country championships. So everything else it falls under the threshold of a mass gathering. This was really a courtesy report to the council where there are large events happening, but they don't reach that threshold. So that's an excellent catch.
Okay, sorry, go ahead, Mark.
That was exactly my question.
Okay.
Thank you.
Forgive me for reaching outside also. I think that I can follow what we're supposed to be talking about, but we are talking about food trucks, and I will offer just a little piece of history. George Turner could probably recall this, but some years ago, they wanted to put a food truck on Shabig Island, and they wanted to put it at the head of the pier, and there was only one store on the island. The store that was on the pier had closed, and this fellow wanted to come in and have a food truck on the pier and sell all sorts of stuff. And the consensus at the time was that we should be protecting people that pay property tax and the community and not allowing those who just want to drive in and basically skim the cream off the top of the sales. So I have a little bit of angst, if you will, about food trucks, and I know that you'll be respectful about how you develop your policy going forward. And I would not like to see a food truck get a free ride without some contribution either to the community, to the clubs that are participating at the sporting event, but something that makes them show that they're part of, they're paying a price to be in our community.
Yeah, and I totally agree, and I probably should have mentioned this at the outset. One of the main tenets of the what will be the amendment to the Twin Brook policy. This isn't going to be open season and 24-hour, burgers on demand. It's basically going to be events, and there'll be a process. The food trucks will have to register, for the lack of a better term, through my office, and it will be event-based. It's not all right, on Tuesdays it's mainly burgers, and Thursdays it's Taco Thursday, or it should be Taco Tuesday. But in any case, that's not the intent of this. It's a opportunity to provide relief in times where volunteers are scarce, and these community-based resources, Cumberland Soccer Club, Cumberland Lacrosse Club, they're all residents that are participating in our programs, and the more that they can fundraise, the more that it benefits the community as a whole. They contribute back to our operation. When they buy a dozen soccer goals for $10,000, those are the same soccer goals we're using for rec. We're using for school. So it's where we always draw the line here is I get a request every week from an outside group to hold a AAU tournament of whatever it is, lacrosse, soccer. I mean, it's nonstop, and that to me is, and certainly I would defer to council, or at least the advisory board, is not the intent of the property.
Pete, I had one question. I was wondering, with some of the larger events, and this might already be in place, and I just don't know about it, but is there an opportunity for boosters or some type of group to collect the recyclables? I know that the volleyball team during the bicentennial was able to fundraise quite a bit because they had the clink containers sent everywhere. Do you guys do that currently, or is that something that we could maybe look at in the future?
Typically, the organizing group kind of has responsibility / first rights to kind of any revenue stream. They can farm that out if they want, but as a general rule of thumb, they have their trash buckets and their can buckets. We kind of tend to just defer to them.
Yeah, no,
on
that
those
answers the
type of
question.
things. I mean, I certainly an event on the scale of the bicentennial, it was all hands on deck, and I think every organization in the community had some role in that event. But for these, really the biggest one we do is, like, on a nice day, is the Maine Principal Association State Cross Country Championship. That we had over 4,000 people at Twin Brook last October for that event, and multiple groups did benefit from that event locally.
Thank you. This is open to public comment. Are there any questions or comments from the public? I will entertain a motion. Probably just add the word mass gatherings plan.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, yeah, go for it.
Madam Chair, I move to approve the mass gathering plan at Twin Brooks for FY 2024.
Second.
Motion and second. Any questions or comments from the council? All those in favor? Unanimous. Thank you, Pete.
Thank you.
23-044, to hold a public hearing to consider and act on a medical marijuana registered caregiver license renewal for Evergreen Cannabis Company, owner Andrew Pettingill, located at 222 Gray Road. I know we have a memo from our town clerk who reviewed the renewal application. The renewal fee has been paid. All documentation required for that renewal has been reviewed and received. Any questions or comments from the council? I should also note our CEO also visited the property per the ordinance and registration, and no concerns or issues there either.
I was just going to add that Bill Longley's comments was probably the most important one to me, and he has no concerns over the renewal of this application.
This is open to public comment. Andrew, I know you're here too. Are there any questions or comments? Any questions or comments from the council?
I'm just curious, in light of the article in last Sunday's paper where 1 in 4 or more medical marijuana providers are going out of business, how's business?
It's tough.
It's tough.
Yeah, honestly, businesses, when we started in cash flow sheets and projections, our price per pound was over double what it is now, like even triple. Being on a wholesale market in with a retail store, is, we started with 20 license cap in Portland. Due to a citizens referendum, there's now 100 stores available. Right now there's 55, so it's, we're minimizing, we're trying to lower overhead, lower our costs. Me and Kristen unfortunately had to let go of most of all of our employees, but we're, community-based, we're local, we're here for the long haul, we live in the community. We have a 2-year-old and a 6-year-old. It's what I've done my whole life. I have family members who use the medicine to help with cancer. It's tough, but we're just happy to be one of those people that are still,
Still
afloat
doing
and still doing enough to support ourselves. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Yep. Thank you.
I will entertain a motion.
I'll give you a motion. I move to approve the medical marijuana registered caregiver license renewal for Evergreen Cannabis Company, owner Andrew Pettengill, located at 222 Gray Road.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any questions or comments from the council? All those in favor? Unanimous. Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you, Council.
Let's see, 23-045, to hold a public hearing to consider and act on a liquor license application for Wander Group LLC, DBA Wander at Longwoods, operating at 36 Wander Way. This is a new application. All seem to be in order. I'm assuming this is from address and details and the picture. This is all the new Longwoods kind of vision. I know I do a quick status on the construction every time I drive by. Any questions or comments from the council? Mr. Manager, anything specific you would add or call out based on our town clerk's review of this?
No, they're working closely with staff, and things are developing and moving along. So staff recommends approval of the license.
Oh, so I just had a quick question, and sorry for jumping in here, Ron.
Oh, sorry.
I noticed that the application is to Wander Group LLC, but the owner of that property is still the Synergosity LLC, I believe, that came before us.
Correct.
As part of that purchase in the CZA.
That's correct.
Okay. Do we know, it doesn't look like any of those owners are, well, maybe they're the same owners of the other entity. I guess it's not really relevant, but it seems like they're kind of leasing that out. So, okay. Thank you.
Ron, did you have?
Just a question for the manager. I see this is for a liquor license. Have they come forward for a victualers for food?
So they wouldn't come before you for that. Several years ago, the state has taken over that entire process, and we don't get involved except for the fair. And those are just for the nonprofits. So they would be going directly to the state, and the state doesn't ask our input anymore.
So does anybody know if that has gone forward?
I don't believe it has yet, because I think if you remember the initial applications, I think the first year was going to be food trucks and outside area, and they were going to work on the outside as well while the building was under construction. And I don't think they've veered from that plan.
Okay.
This is a public hearing. Any questions or comments from the public? I will entertain a motion.
Please, sir.
I would make a motion, Madam Chairman. I move to adopt the liquor license application for Wander Group LLC, doing business as Wander at Longwoods, operating at 36 Wander Way.
Second.
Motion is second. Any questions or comments from the council? All those in favor? Thank you, unanimous. 23-046, to hold a public hearing to consider and act on the readoption of the February 22, 2016 version of the Route 1 design standards as recommended by the planning board. Mr. Manager, you want to just hit that?
Madam Chair, these design standards never made it to the website, and they were basically passed out by staff to applicants as they came in. Under the advice of the town attorney, they basically asked that we readopt those standards, even though they were in effect. They have been posted on the website now, and there are no changes to them.
Any questions or comments from the council?
There's one thing I wanted to point out that you'll see in here is the definition of what a shed is. And I've seen in the media towns that have concerns about people moving into sheds on property. So we have defined shed. A shed is not a dwelling. You know, if someone wanted to live in a shed, I'd say you can go for it, but you have to meet your shed has to meet setback requirements. So that's clear later on toward the end. It says,
that's in the next
That
item.
might be the next
That's the
agenda
next
item,
item.
I think.
oh, is that the next
Yeah,
one?
we're doing all the.
Next one, sorry.
Yep, that's okay.
I'm blending them all together. Never mind. Well, they put them all together, so here we go. Okay.
This is a public hearing. Any questions or comments from the public? I will entertain a motion.
Madam Chair, I move to readopt the February 22nd, 2016 version of the Route 1 standards as recommended by the Planning Board.
Second.
Motion. All those in favor? Unanimous. 23-047, to hold a public hearing to consider and act on amendments to Chapter 315 zoning, Article 4, lot regulations to add Section 33.1, effect of demolition of dwelling units, and update lot densities 315-10, 315-11, 315-16, 315-17, 315-18, 315-20. These will clarify minimum lot area per dwelling unit and add 315-17E LDR to conclude design standards for multiplexes, and 315-14 definition for shed, and 315-45 section for conversions A, A3, and A4B as recommended by the planning board. Should note all these changes are related to LD 2003. And so while we that may be a little bit in limbo, believe it was determined that it was just better to clean up our zoning language and just clean it up as we would, and that way we're ready if and when LD 2003 actually goes into effect. Anything you would add?
Yes, Steve Moriarty, our representative, called me this afternoon on his way back from Augusta and told us that the standards look like they're going to be extended 6 months for towns with town council form of government and 12 months for town meeting form of government. So I reached out to both Alyssa and Natalie today. Both felt that a lot of this was housekeeping, and the biggest changes were going to be in the ADUs. Many communities didn't have ADUs, and we've had them for, 6 to 10 years. It's been a while. So that was coming regardless of what other towns wanted to fight. And they felt to go forward was good advice and would just prepare us for the next round. They were surprised, as we all were, that the impacts weren't going to be as great as people would think on Cumberland because of our zoning and the way we have our zoning set up. And actually, our affordable housing zoning is probably as aggressive as the state's recommendation. So I think we're in really good shape, and I think the ordinance committee did a great job going through all this. It was a lot of verbiage, as you know, but I think this really is cleanup, and we're in really good shape going forward.
Can you remind me, Mr. Manager, why we have .94 acres instead of square feet for island residential? Everything else is square feet.
I don't know. It might be an oversight. It's such a small zone in our community, so the only development is out there is on Sturtevant, so I think that's all we have left for islands, Sturtevant and Basket, so.
That might be a question I ask Natalie next time I see her. Why did we stick
odd.
with that?
Yeah, we, just
It's
about
not
everything else is in
consistent.
acres.
Okay, thank you.
Quick question there. The 189 square footage on the shed, that's a new number, if I recall.
That is.
It was 2-something before.
It used to be 600 square feet for us. So a shed was anything less than, 600 square feet was the minimum size for any type of dwelling unit, and that shrunk down to less than 200 square feet, which seems really small.
I'm going to have to go home and tell my wife how lucky she is to have her she shed.
It's a public hearing. Any questions or comments from the public? I will entertain a motion.
Who wants
I was
to
going to
take that
say,
on?
I had to do it.
I'll
Someone
give
else.
it to you, Allison.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Charlie.
Glasses
Yeah.
To find them for. I move to amend Chapter 315 zoning, Article 4, lot regulations to add Section 33.1, effective demolition of dwelling units, and update lot densities 315.10, 315.11, 315.16, 315.17, 315.18, 315.20. These will clarify minimum lot area per dwelling unit and add 315.17E LDR to include design standards for multiplexes, and 315.14 definition for shed, and 315.45 section for conversions, A3, and A4B, as recommended by the planning board.
Second.
A motion and a second. All those in favor? Thank you. 23-048, to set a date of May 22nd to hear a report from Goral Palmer Engineers regarding the intersection of Skillen and Blanchard Roads. So as a reminder, this was a engineering report that has been done previously. It was over 5 years ago, or about 5 years ago. 7? Over.
Yeah, I think so.
Over 5 years ago. It had been brought up again as the recommendation is in contrast to what ultimately has been voted upon, I think, 2 other previous times by the council. But in recognition of a lot of change, post-COVID and commuting patterns and just kind of growth in that area of town, it felt like due diligence to get an updated report and to not base any kind of review or decisions on the pre-existing. So I think we've received confirmation that they would be ready by that date.
Correct.
So this would be to hear the report. The expectation is that we would not be taking any action on the 22nd, so that we have time to digest, ask questions of Goral Palmer, and then be able to actually bring up any action at that first meeting in June. So it'll be just a public hearing to hear the report on the 22nd, no action at that time, and then we'll look to make action, take action or not at the following council meeting. Anything I missed or you'd
Nope,
add?
I think you did well, very well.
Any questions or comments from the council? All right. All those, oh, go
Can
ahead.
I ask the Sherwins if you have any questions or comments about this? Because this is your corner. This is where you live, so, and you're here, so I'd like to hear. Can you step up to the podium?
Okay, go ahead. Let me just say a question first. Will that report be published before the meeting
Yes,
on the website?
yes, on the website.
Yeah, the question for those at home was, will the report be published before the meeting? And the answer was yes, so.
Yes, all documents for the council meeting are published at minimum the Thursday prior to our council meeting.
Right.
I was here before when you did this, and I said I ran a daycare.
Could you use
Can you just
microphone?
be a little bit closer to the mic? Yeah, go ahead.
I was here before. And I said, I ran a daycare. I do not now anymore. I'm retired. But you get up in the morning, you see a young man sitting in a chair with a blanket over his
Microphone.
oh, excuse me, over his knees, sitting by the fire hydrant, thank you. I'm thinking, what is he doing? Why is he there? So we walked over and asked. And I just said before at the other meeting is like, couldn't you just let us have a update that this person's going to be sitting there? Then he left, came back and sat on the top of his car. I just thought it was, I mean, I understand it was innocent, but you question people nowadays, and I don't understand why I just didn't get a phone call. I'm out gardening, I see this person, it's strange. That's my only comment.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I just have public comment. My name's Andrew. I'm a resident of West Cumberland. I think it's a really important study. I hope the West Cumberland public takes notice of it. It's a very dangerous intersection. Daily, I see possible accidents. Weekly, there is an accident. Luckily, there's a fire department right there and volunteer EMT right there. I think that the town of Cumberland could greatly needs the roundabout. It would make traffic slow down there. It would help the community. It would help the public. It would help safety.
Sorry, Andrew. Just point of clarification. So this this one is actually for Skillen and Blanchard Road. Sorry, it says Blackstrap. So sorry. Yes. Yes.
It says Blanchard. It says
I
Blanchard.
know. I'm sorry.
okay.
I'm sorry. That is coming up, but yes, sorry about that. But I do hope folks in West Cumberland do take notice. I know we have almost 400 postcards going out and kind of noticing about this. So
Both meetings.
Yep, for both. So so yeah, for the Skillen and Blanchard roads, as well as kind of the next item we'll talk about as well. But we are kind of proactively noticing and obviously always encourage folks to come out, especially listen to the report on the 22nd. You can be here in person and be able to ask questions or add comment, but obviously you can also watch from home and watch a recorded session afterwards as well. So.
Madam Chair, so moved on the motion.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second. Oh, give that to
Thank you,
Counselor
Ron.
Kopp.
All those in favor? Thank you. Next is 23-049 to schedule a neighborhood meeting for May 25th to hear a presentation regarding the roundabout at Route 100 and Skillen Blackstrap Road. And as Andrew noted before, I know just very recently there was a very severe and significant accident in that intersection. And well, I think this is kind of a combined safety and economic development opportunity that we'll be reviewing and hearing a presentation on from the Maine DOT, I think is planning to be there, right?
Yes, but it'll be Goral Palmer who'll be doing the presentation.
Okay. So again, notice is going out to those in the area, but I should note any Cumberland resident is more than welcome to come to that neighborhood meeting. Obviously, no action will be taken. It really is an opportunity to kind of share information and get feedback. I know the one we had a year ago.
Yeah,
A year ago?
Last summer.
Was wonderful turnout, so I do hope folks come, and it really was a great exchange of perspectives and ideas, and I think gained a lot as we went out for the RFP. And so again, just hope we have a similar participation and engagement on the 25th.
Just clarify that the meeting is here, not in the West Cumberland station,
I
because
think-
the last one was in West Cumberland, correct?
It was, and I think we were going to try to hold it in the same place, Ron.
Oh, we are, okay.
Yeah, I think.
I just want to make it clear where the meeting is going to be.
It's a little different because it's dictated by a process that the state sets up. So it'll be an overview of a lot of different things, and that's the next step in this process. So there'll be another meeting in the future as well as they get further down the road, but this is kind of the midpoint of the evaluation, just to find out what they found and report that back out to the public.
Give you a motion,
Please.
Madam Chair. I move to schedule a neighborhood meeting for May 25th to hear a presentation regarding a roundabout at Route 100 and Skillen Blackstrap Road.
Second.
All those in favor?
Abstain.
Oh, abstention. Thank you, Mr. Kopp. Moving to 23-050, to hold a public hearing to consider and act on the adoption of the fiscal year 2024 municipal budget. So, thank you, Helene. Mr. Manager's going to kick us off. Oh, no, Helene's kicking us off.
Thank
Sorry,
you,
go.
Madam Chair. Our Finance Director, Helene Di Bartolomeo, is here. It's a very hard name for me to say, so I have to practice more. As you know, we started with a series of meetings back in January. Was the kickoff for our department heads. For that month, we've met individually with each department, myself, the Finance Director, and the Assistant Town Manager. Went through all the budgets. We started, unfortunately, with very bad news initially, that we were looking at somewhere upwards of $2.65 for a budget increase, for a mill rate increase, which was astronomical. And most of that was because of bad information the school got initially on school funding. Shortly, within about a month, we got better information, and then as we progressed through, we had 4 meetings with the Finance Committee, which were attended by the entire Town Council, and came up with the budget that the Finance Director will give you an overview of tonight. I think it culminated with that Saturday meeting we just had a few weeks back, and tonight we'll present the final budget. We also did a comparison to the communities we typically benchmark against, and percentage-wise, we were lower than Falmouth, Yarmouth, and Cape Elizabeth. Freeport is going through a transition right now with town managers, and their information wasn't available when we published this. So that's where we're at, and I'll let Helene take it from there.
You killed it.
It's dead.
Is it rebooting? Oh, yeah.
Good evening, Helene Di Bartolomeo, Finance Director. So what I provided before you is the revenue budget, and the next page has the expense budget. This is what we went through on Saturday's meeting. As you can see, for the revenue, we're including everything but what we will be raising from property taxes. And as you can see, we're almost at about $1 million increase there on revenues. Again, on the expense budget, we provided a expense budget by department, and the expense budget overall, including the school and the county, was an increase of 7.4%, going from $35.4 million to now $38 million. Also, part of the request for the approval is to also approve the budget for TIF funds. As you remember, when we spoke about TIF, we're taking about $1.3 million from TIF in order to supply some of that capital expense and leaving the capital budget in the general fund flat so that we would not see an increase to the general fund. So overall, for the town of Cumberland alone, excluding the county and the school, we're looking at an increase in the revenue budget and also an increase on the expense budget. Together, that nets out to $294,000 increase overall to the previous year's budget. Here's just an overview of our expenses by category. As we all know, our majority of our expenses come from wages and salaries as well as benefits, with contract services right behind that, and debt service. Again, this is a breakout of percentage, not including the school and the county. This was a comparison that we did as far as gross per capita between the school, between the surrounding towns around us, just purely taking population and their budget for FY24. And as you can see, we're right smack dab in the middle of our neighboring towns. It was just, again, just to kind of have a gauge on where we fell with our neighbors.
My turn? This is a really interesting slide. And Helene, can you hit that F8 button or F9 button on the keyboard there? It's going to make your mouse look really big. Because, yeah, when you look at this, that first line represents about the majority of where our tax dollars go to. Each dollar that we pay in taxes, about 70% of it goes to the SAD, about 4% goes to the county, and the balance is 26% or so is what the town spends. And when we look at the breakdown below on the mill rate, you'll see the increases for each of the three categories. Because that's where our bills go to. We pay for education, of course, we pay for county services, and then the rest is town services. That increase this year will be about 95 cents, a little bit over 4.5% increase in the mill rate. Can you go to the next slide, Helene? Thanks. And this is where we've been historically. I mean, we started back 5 years ago, and we basically were at 574. We dipped during COVID, obviously, when the council froze the budget, and then we basically came back out of COVID up to about 20 cents over where we were 5 years ago. Education was not as fortunate. It had a much larger increase in that 5-year period, but they also have a much larger budget than we do. So I think percentage-wise, we have been very responsible with our tax dollars, and while still providing a high level of services for our community. So, and with that, at this point, we're ready to turn the budget over to you as to where you'd like to proceed. This is a public hearing. We are looking at basically a general fund budget of a municipal budget of about $13,760,179. That's offset by a little over $7.3 million in revenues. So that's what exactly goes to the tax rate, as I think Helene showed you that slide as well. So from our standpoint, when you look at year over year, we saw an increase of about $294,000, a little over, just under 5% increase. And I think from the graphs we've shown as well, a lot of that change was in salary and benefits, and the rest was fairly small increases across the boards. So as I've shared with the council before, we have some extremely difficult years ahead of us, and I think we're in a position where we can essentially almost march in place, because it's going to be really, really difficult And these are the things we plan for. I mean, these are things we meet with the school board, we talk to each other, we talk and look at what capital plans we each have, and we know that this school was coming, and we've known it for some time. But the reality is, I wish it was going to be 73 million. I think it's going to be much more than that when it actually gets to budget next June because of the inflationary costs of construction. We're not seeing anything go in the other direction or flattening out. We're seeing it just go up. So I am a little bit nervous. Those of us who attended the meeting with North Yarmouth, Cumberland, and the SAD, learned that the school has almost $2 million dedicated this year just to the portables that we have on the campus. So the need is definitely there. It is going to be a difficult few years as we implement that debt service. And my department head knows that it's going to be, once that debt hits the books, it's going to be very difficult to do anything but just kind of stay in place. And that could be 5 years. So we've been through recessions. We've been through a lot of other things in the past. This is going to be very similar to that, but it's going to be very difficult to do much other than really just kind of maintain the status quo for a few years. And that's why we discuss these things and discuss these plans. So we're fortunate that we do have the TIF monies that will continue to be there to help, especially in our capital planning between public safety radio towers for our fire and our police, continue to pave our roads, keep those types of things funded that honestly I don't know if we would be able to do without the TIF monies. So for me, I think we're in good shape here for this budget year and moving forward. I think it will be difficult, but I think we can get there if we all work together.
Thank you. Before I open to questions, I just want to hit on a few things just based on questions we all had in the workshop, so others may be asking it too or thinking about it. So just to be clear, as Helene mentioned, that revenue line that you're seeing as far as the budget does not include tax revenues. That's such thing as impact fees, permit fees, the revenues generated by our recreation department, Valhalla. So those are true kind of revenues from the operations of the town. And that's why kind of offsetting that are the expenses associated with the operations of the town, which then net to the amount that we need to fund through property taxes. 2 is just a process thing, is just, I know we're quoting mill rates and things like that, but the mill rate is not officially set until our first July meeting.
The second one.
Second July meeting, where our assessor comes in with the official kind of assessed value of the town. So he has obviously been close to this and providing approximates, but I just want to be clear to folks that the official mill rate doesn't get set until that second meeting of July based on assessed value through June 30th. Anything else our other councilors would add that came up in discussion or clarifying? This is a public hearing, so I'll open it up for questions or comments.
Madam Chair, if I can just add, as the finance chair, I just really want to thank you, Helene, for coming to all of those workshops for that many hours and being extremely prepared. Anytime we had a question on any one of the lines, it was almost encyclopedically odd that you knew the number, which account it was in, and which page it was on so quickly. And so thank you for that. It made the process go much more smoothly, and I think we were able to focus on the big year-over-year changes in dollars and percentages that I think made the budget process a little less painful than it otherwise could have been. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
I wanted to echo Mark's comments there also. The going through the budget is never a pleasant task. Anytime you look at increase in cost and whether it's insurance, whether it's the purchase of a new truck, a new ambulance, wages, it's an unpleasant task. It doesn't make any of us feel good. We all are highly cognizant of the fact that there are people in this community who have a difficult time paying their taxes. They have a difficult time with more than that, and it's not unrecognized. And I think everybody on this council knows that, and we have worked hard to minimize the impact. And again, part of that is still maintain the value that what this community brings and the services it provides. And anyways, I'm happy to support the budget as we have presented here this evening.
I think it's probably important to note kind of that 4.8% increase is obviously an increase. But when you think about kind of the inflationary environment that we're in and seeing inflation at 8 and 9, to be able to hold that at 4.8, where so much of our cost is wage and benefits, and ensuring that we're competitive in our wages for our town and the roles that we have here, but also just those costs we can't control. I think we saw diesel, gas, heat, making investments in our town, thankfully, around solar or heat pumps to, be able to drive that down over time. So again, to net at the 4.8, to Bob's point, I think I was really grateful of the discussions. We used the full time for every workshop to go through it. So yes, I support where we land and feel good about choices and balance in our budget of the services we're providing and how we're doing that.
I'll give you a motion.
Please do.
Madam Chair, I move to set the municipal fiscal year 2024 general fund expenditure budget at $13,760,179 and the general fund non-property tax revenue budget at $7,314,810 to offset the impact of property taxes and recommended by the Finance Committee. And furthermore, I authorize $3,034,531 of tax increment financing TIF funds to be used as presented in the FY 2024 budget as recommended by the TIF and Finance Committee.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor? Unanimous. Thank you. Moving to new business. The first item I wanted to bring up is kind of to propose moving forward with a charter amendment, which from a process standpoint would be on the ballot in November. The way our charter reads now, while we have some flexibility with kind of our town meetings, somewhat, there is very much no flexibility in the swearing in of newly elected town councilors after the election. And with the addition of Juneteenth as a holiday, that very often will be the Monday following. So I would like us to pursue just adding the flexibility to move it to a Tuesday if the Monday after election falls on a holiday. Again, we'll just move to the Tuesday, but that way we don't have that conflict, and it would be very clear in our charter kind of what the intent there was, and obviously the Monday would be the default. It would just give that flexibility if required due to the calendar. I'd like thoughts on that, but I'm also going to throw it over to Tig, we're doing kind of a review of, in general, we have a lot of meetings, not just for the town council, but committees and whatnot. So I'm going to hand that over to Tig.
We do have a lot of meetings, but I think we also have a really rich community with a lot of different faiths and worldviews. And so one of the things that we'd like to look at is kind of creating a larger cultural and religious holiday calendar for awareness across the board, so that meetings aren't necessarily scheduled if they're conflicting with whether it be Chinese New Year or Diwali or Rosh Hashanah. The school district has also rolled out a similar calendar because I think there were some scheduling conflicts with some of the holidays as well. And so we're working on kind of how to operationalize this. Whitney, Bill and I have been kind of putting our heads together a little bit, and maybe we'll do something kind of color-coded on the website. But ultimately to give people a tool, a scheduling tool, so that they are not putting meetings that could probably easily be moved around on a major holiday. And I think that'll make us an even more inclusive culture, and that's a good thing.
Humbug.
Oh, zip it.
I think it's one thing when it's obviously an impromptu executive session or something like that. But most of our meetings are a pretty set schedule. We can be planful about them. And so I think having a tool that allows us to be thoughtful and cognizant, we've been very clear about keeping meetings because we want the public to know that they're invited and engaged. And it would seem that by not at least acknowledging or trying to be cognizant of holidays other than the ones that the seven of us may or may not celebrate or recognize, feels disingenuous relative to kind of keeping meetings so that the public can be here and engaged. So, and that goes for, again, committee meetings and just really anything that would be open to the public, a neighborhood meeting, right? That we can have a tool that we can look at quickly and make sure that this feels like something that, based on what we have and kind of a comprehensive view, it would be something available to the general public in our community. So appreciate the effort and obviously leveraging what the school has already kind of gone through and making sure that still made sense for us. So appreciate that work, Whitney and Bill, too. Go ahead, Bill.
Madam Chair, would you like, we're going to have the charter amendment presented by the town attorney in legal language. So we hope to have that for your meeting after the election. So it would be the 2nd July meeting. At that same meeting, we could have a draft of the calendar so everybody could see what it might look like, and you would have it, and you could approve it that night along with committee assignments. Are we doing committee assignments too, or is that in August? Usually for elections. Okay, so we'll do all of that as more housekeeping than anything.
Bill, the Holocaust and Human Rights Center regularly publishes a 5-year out calendar that you could probably find on their website.
Okay.
And it's not just the Jewish calendar.
No, it's everybody, and that's what we have from the school, and we've gone through a lot of them. I've just shared with Tig, I really don't know which are like high holy days that are really sensitive versus maybe more of a celebration, because the school even admits that they notice those holidays in their calendar and try to avoid them from meetings if possible, but they're not like days off from school and things like that. So I'm relying on other folks. And I don't know if that calendar that you referenced, Shirley, does that do the same? Does it kind of, is there a hierarchy of days off?
I'll find one because it's regularly available. I've used it in the past,
For parent-teacher stuff?
to
and-
not
yeah.
schedule exams or
Yeah,
whatever during.
Absolutely. Great, thank you.
Sir?
Since you have raised this subject of swearing in newly elected town councilors, I can't help but ask that we consider this a little bit deeper. We explored the idea last year of having councilors serve on a 3-year rotation based on a July 1st starting date, and I'm still in favor of that. I know the ordinance committee at the time last year, you voted unanimously to move it forward to the full council. 2 of the old goats came in here and shut us down. But if we're going to consider language, it might be at least appropriate for me if we had the option of having that language presented as part of a package and we could review it and we can shoot it down again, or if you all feel enamored to my thoughts, we could pass it this time. You're looking at me like I got 2 heads, so.
I'm trying to remember, I know, yes, we had some passionate testimony to not change what's not broken. We did have the language in front of us at that time, too.
We can bring it back. It's not a problem to bring it back.
Yep.
I like it because it's clean. To me, it's just, there's July 1st start.
Be an exciting November meeting because the November election is pretty quiet right now. So this would be a lot of local participation, we hope.
If you look at, I just beat the dead horse for another second here. Planning board members just get out of the town office and the town clerk swears them in. School board members just get out of the town office and the town clerk swears them in. There's little formality. We, on the other hand, you know, there's a little bit more formality to it. At the legislative level, there's a lot of formality behind it. But I just think that July 1st date, it just makes sense. It's a calendar year. You serve for a 3-year period. July 1st, add 3 years, next term starts. So I would ask that we reconsider.
I don't remember what the vote. I don't remember what the vote was, but I thought I don't remember what the vote was, but I thought it was pretty.
6-1. I think it was 6-1.
Okay, so you had a lot of support there, Bob. So
wow, I don't recall. I don't remember it quite like that.
Let's roll the tape. So, so I don't know.
All right,
I just
let it go.
I feel like no matter what, they would be brought up in after, obviously, the swearing in June. So it'd be a July.
I think there's enough time to have it for the first. I think both items could be done at the first meeting if you wanted them to. I think we have enough time. At the next meeting, we're going to have to vote to move the June meetings to the 1st and the 3rd because of, maybe that could be changed too. I think we go through that process every year because we vote in this room and the council meetings the night before just don't quite work with, you know, all the booths set up in here. So I think for us, we could have it ready for you for the first July meeting, and then it could be ready to go after that because it's not going to be acted on until November. So it's really your call. We could also work on the calendar and have that ready for you as well.
I mean, I think it makes sense. There's no harm in bringing it up again, and
if it's not ready for prime time, we can table it to the next meeting and go from there.
sounds good. With that, I will open it for new business. Mr. Kopp?
My good friend Dean has donated $20 for the food pantry, and I have my $20. It's a very worthy cause, and I want to thank the people that continuously donate their time to this food pantry because it is truly one of the greatest things in this town. I went for a motorcycle ride yesterday, and I went up through Sabattis, Leeds, and it's amazing how many towns that you see that have food pantries now. And it makes you realize that there are people that are less fortunate that really rely on that. So kudos to everybody that helps out. That's all I have.
Thank you, Ron.
We have our walkthrough at Twin Brook on Saturday at 7:30 in the morning alongside the Forestry Subcommittee and Paul Larrabee. I know a couple of us have baseball pictures later on in the day, but we'll make all of that work from a scheduling perspective, but warning there may be some small children in tow as we go look at the best way to murder bittersweet and the other invasives. And then just a heads up, the proposed changes to the ordinance language on mooring allocations is going to be coming up on the May 15th Ordinance Committee meeting. I think Chip Rumsey is going to be there to present on that. And I just wanted to give a big thank you to Helene for taking me through municipal budgets 101 for dummies several times. My first time going through the budget process, I just really appreciate all that extra help and you really just taking the time to thoughtfully explain all of it. You are a rock star. Thanks.
Quiz on Friday.
That's it.
Wow. The only thing I had this evening is the comment about the greeting of the new residents last Tuesday.
Yes.
What it's just such a great experience to not so much to to greet the new residents, which that's fun too, but the enthusiasm by all the people that work in this community who volunteer, the library, the Historical Society, Lands and Conservation, the fire department, police department, the code enforcement, the tax assessor, everybody was happy to be there. It wasn't like, oh my God, I got to show up tonight and shake people's hands. I just came away with that feeling that you'd have to travel a long ways before you found a better community to live in.
Thank you, Bob. I echo that. Mark?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just two quick things on LD 1345, which is the bill that we've all kind of been working on, the senior property tax, local option for senior property tax deferral programs. I think it was last week, if I'm not mistaken. That was in workshop in the taxation subcommittee, and the bad news is it was tabled, but the good news is it was tabled, I think, with every other bill that was potentially there to amend LD 290. And so we'll see what happens with that. I think that's a pretty common practice, it sounds like, unless they're going to make some large moves in that space. So we'll just keep everybody updated on what's happening there, but it is currently tabled in that taxation committee with, I think, 8 other bills right now on taxation. Very briefly, I just wanted to, if this already hasn't been shared, just a letter from the Yarmouth Police Department Chief Gallant to Chief Rumsey here, thanking him and specifically the other members of the Cumberland Police Department for their assistance on the April 18th tragic shooting that happened on Interstate 295 in Yarmouth. So I'm just going to read this briefly for the public here. Dear Chief Rumsey, please accept my sincere gratitude and appreciation for the outstanding response provided by the Cumberland Police Department during the April 18th shooting incident on Interstate 295 in Yarmouth. The prompt and professional response from your agency was truly exceptional and played a critical role in resolving the situation safely and effectively. The dedication and commitment demonstrated by the staff was outstanding, and it was evident that their main priority was to ensure the safety and security of everyone involved. We recognize these types of incidents require significant resources and coordination, and are grateful for the time and effort your department invested in ensuring a seamless response. The collaboration between our departments was seamless and a true testament to the importance of interagency cooperation. It's reassuring to know that we have such reliable and trustworthy partners in law enforcement. Once again, I would like to extend my heartfelt thanks to you and the Cumberland Police Department for your vital support during this critical time. Your hard work and dedication to keeping Maine communities safe is truly appreciated. Please extend our gratitude to all members of your department who responded during this time. Sincerely, Daniel A. Gallant, Chief of Police for Yarmouth. So just wanted to share that. That was just a really quick, I've heard the stories about how many officers were on the scene during that moment, and I just thought it was a good letter that I wanted to share with the public. So that's it for me, Madam Chair.
That's a great share, Mark. I'm just going to repeat what a couple of people brought up. Bob, you're 100% right about the new residents. What a great event. The room was packed. It's a special day, and I think we can't be any more welcoming than that. That was just really a great event. And I also want to repeat what was said about the budget. Helene, great job. And to the Finance Committee, you guys really had your act together and really, there were just for the public, there were a lot of questions asked about individual items on there. And nothing was rubber stamped. Everything was questioned, and your hard work did not go unnoticed. And finally, it's just nice, Brenda, to see you back. I know you've had some family stuff you've been dealing with, but we are so grateful that you're back.
Well, mostly Bill.
That's all I have, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I just wanted to follow up on Tony Donovan, right? I get the right Tony this time. I had a Miss Tony plan. Tony Donovan's conversation with us today. I have forwarded you, since he was here, the information he shared with me. And part of that information includes both Portland's and Auburn's concern about the RUAC recommendations, and a very legitimate, in my belief, concern that the Bicycle Coalition is pushing for this trail to be developed and the tracks to be torn up. And they're doing this with a lot of pre-planning. If you go on and do research like I did throughout the process, you will find that they have tried to pass through Congress, not us, but through Congress, legislation that says, well, if the railroads give up the land, then they can become public trails. They have not succeeded in doing that, and that has gone to the Supreme Court, and where they've torn up rails, they've had to refund or pay landowners for the land. Even going back, my land has only been owned by 4 or 5 people since it's been colonized. So you could go back and find that out. But and if you have any doubt that this is happening, I went online, and the Maine Bicycle Coalition has a high priority bill, 1156, for $30 million that passed and went to appropriations in both the Senate and the House of Reps. So it's in appropriations now for trail development. They also have a bill, this will interest the engineer and you, Bill, to exempt bicycle trails or trails from stormwater maintenance and rules. All, you know, when you put a road in, and that was one of my concerns for the trail behind me, because there's a stream that runs through the land, and it is actually shoreland zone protected because it flows uninhibited into Casco Bay. And to put a trail right next to it without stormwater management would not be okay. And then there's another bill, LD 209 and 404, for the legislature to implement the recommendations of the RUAC. What Tony's concern is, and I share this concern, and Bill and I have talked about it, you heard over and over, and I'm not going to put words in your mouth, but how flawed the process was, and how like chasing chickens it was sometimes with the way the process went. And what he's asking, and another fun fact, is the data that they used was really old. They hired this data company to give them information, but all they did was reprint a report that they had generated years ago, so it was old data. PAX has a rapid transit plan that actually is looking at Ocean Gateway as one of the hubs. So a train kind of option in the Ocean Gateway area would make a lot of sense, especially to bring, like you said, Bob, workers who might live in Auburn or South Auburn, I don't know what you'd call it, New Gloucester, Pownell, people who might live in those areas to get to Portland rapidly and help with some of our workforce shortages. So I don't know what Tony wanted us to do. I'm going to talk to, I personally am going to reach out to Steve Moriarty. I don't know if in your legislative work, Mark, you can get more information on this. You know, it's the whole process has just, you know, if it looks like a pig and smells like a pig, it's probably a pig. The whole process has just had so many issues, and yet they still are going fast forward because, like apple pie and baseball, who's going to say no to a trail? So that's all I have for new business, to dig up the politics of the RUAC again.
I would be interested, you know, Shirley, if you're talking to Steve or maybe Bill, if you have a more comprehensive, I think it would be important, considering the amount of mileage that potentially goes through Cumberland, to just get a sense of like where are all these bills, and kind of things are getting piecemealed versus I don't think that was while the recommendation from the RUAC was, you know, as such by a majority vote, not unanimous, to pursue, what is it, trail until
rail.
rail. I think it was to pursue a process of understanding cost and obviously to engage public. There were no neighborhood
They
meetings.
say-
Right. So I guess just understanding and getting him to be able to come here and be in.
The politics of it are, we all know if they take up the rails, they're never putting them back. But they have to say trails and tail rails so they don't have to pay for the land. And that was planned probably decades ago. This has been in the works. And Dick Woodbury, he's on the Maine Bicycle Coalition. He's part of a lobbying group out of North Carolina that is doing this nationwide. So, you know, I'm just my own little ignorant landabutter here.
Yeah. I mean, I will say.
Trying to believe in the good in people and
I mean,
disillusioned at every turn.
Yeah, I mean, I think we have residents in our town, so while it might be an outside organization, I know I'm part of national organizations that support the same things I do as well. So, I mean, there are local residents who are coming forward. But yeah, I think, you know, Steve represents our town, and if there are bills in front of him,
I agree.
I think that feels like a good next step to have him.
So
You know, ethically, when we have so many other challenges like clean water to residents on Bruce Hill Road and housing for people and tax assistance for seniors, for the legislature to spend $30 million on this just doesn't feel like a priority.
If I can, I think it makes a lot of sense to read the bills. I haven't read them. I don't know if anybody else has, but you may have during the meeting. But it's, I think we start there and figure out what they say, get an update from Steve, and try to figure out what are they trying to do. It makes sense, right? If it's somehow affecting the committee's vote, I think
I'll
it makes
invite
sense.
him.
Just remember that it's a recommendation to the DOT commissioner. It really, that's all the weight that the RUACs held. And while the process was flawed, we complained about it from the beginning, that it still was a recommendation to the commissioner, and he could choose to do whatever he wanted to. I think the legislation could be a lot cleaner in the future, that got to be more what we do at a municipal level, actually hold neighborhood meetings, not, you know, a massive meeting at the Greeley Center for the Arts where people from any community could come and testify. And it was a long meeting, and we were very respectful. We listened, but
Over
how did
60 testimonies.
How did we as Cumberland residents benefit from that? And it was hard to really kind of see the forest through the trees in that process. So I think it has a long way to go. Our committee, after the Mountain Division basically almost unanimously voted for a trail until rail, we basically said, you know, let's take a time out and let's not rush into this until we get more information. And that's why you saw the divided votes you did. I think it was 8-6. 2-1 or something like that. There were 2 abstentions, and there was one who voted for rail only, no other option. So, and that person said he would have gone with rail to trail if he knew that where so many people were going to support that. So the vote was pretty close. It was almost evenly split if you really look at it. So I think we did our job to make a recommendation, which was pretty much a split decision, and the commissioner has done nothing with that recommendation. He did not bring a bill forward in support.
But
of
a bill
anything.
has been brought forward by a legislator, LD
legislature.
404.
Not
has
by the
been-
commissioner, though.
No, but LD 404 has been brought forward by a legislator to have them implement the recommendations of the RUAC.
And unfortunately, before we even voted, they were already putting bills in back and forth. And it just is such a political process. It really didn't ask the towns, you know, and we never even really found out what the costs were to us. So we don't have a real handle on the annual maintenance, annual responsibilities, all of that. So I have one additional item that's not so deep.
I hope it's good news.
It's a good news. Just a heads up, this is a PSA. The Historical Society's annual scavenger hunt is back on for May 19th. And there are only a few spots available, so you really have to reach out to Judy Gagnon, and that is at Cumberland HS 04021. Yes, that's your zip code. cumberlandhs04021. So cumberlandhs04021 if you're interested.
Does postmark today. I mailed mine in today. Judy, take note.
Unless you know Judy
Team
personally.
Foster.
So it should be a very exciting year. They work very hard at this annual event, and it's very exciting to watch the people go out. I've been here in the beginning, and I've been here for the celebration at the end, so it's very, very cool to watch. So like our new resident orientation, Whitney, thank you for organizing that. Excellent job. It was very well done. Had, I don't know, probably close to 50 or so new residents that came out. That was a lot of fun, and everyone enjoyed it. And thank you for bringing that up, everyone. I really appreciate it. They work very hard at that, and we had a lot of good staff here because everybody really does care about their job and care for the people they work for. So thank you for recognizing that as well. I do appreciate that.
Can I just highlight one issue with the new resident? There were so many goodies and grab bag things that now my kids think every time I go to a town council meeting, I'm coming back with presents. So maybe I'm not allowed a bag, maybe next time.
I was going to say, I came home, I said I have a flashlight and I have some police stickers. And AJ goes, is it a police flashlight? And I was like, no, bud. And he's like, it is now. He took that police sticker and he put it on the flashlight. And it was brought to school today for camping day. And then I guess PSA of my own is a reminder that this Sunday is Mother's Day. So just a big happy Mother's Day. To all the mothers out there. It doesn't necessarily mean biological. So just a reminder to thank that mother or mother figure, other figures if you're lucky, in your life. So thank you. That's all I had. I'll take a motion for adjournment. Go ahead, Mr.
I have
Cobb.
one thing before we adjourn. To Bob's thing on swearing in new counselors, it just came to me, the reason that we voted that down the last time is if we have an outgoing counselor that knows he's lost an election, he still could make a motion after he's lost an election. So he could sway a vote, and that's why we killed it. If let's just say I ran for council again and I lost, but I wasn't replaced until July, I could make a motion that might not be in the best interest of this town. And I do remember that as being a reason why we decided not to do that.
I appreciate that, Ron. You are
Yeah,
right.
I forgot about
That's correct.
And
That's correct, yeah.
I think one piece we didn't bring up, so I'm just going to throw it out there. You are 100% correct, is that we can always bring things up for reconsideration. So,
Right.
I don't know. I guess if we
So
really
that's why-
believe
That's why it was a 6-1 vote.
the animosity and kind of ill spirit of an outgoing counselor.
I always look at the good side of people.
But you are right.
Ron and I may be heading into our last year. You better watch our spunkiness.
Exactly. Be careful what you
No
wish
holds
for.
barred.
Watch
I was going to say, what about the entire year of your...
How would you like to be chair for the next 3 years?
I move to adjourn.
Yeah.
I would second him.
All those in favor? Unanimous. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
I should have.
Truck home with me.
Which one?